I was mostly raised in Lake Charles, but I was not born here. I affectionately say that I was born in a suburb of Opelousas. It's a little hamlet called Mallet. And as part of Mallet, there is a subdivision called Pot Cove. And I was born there, raised there, and grew up there until the 8th grade. I was an altar boy at St. Anne Catholic Church. I went to high school at Washington High School here in Lake Charles. I graduated in 1967 as valedictorian of my class. Now remember, I came from a small rural community. It's called Down East. The people in Lake Charles call the folks from Mallet and Opelousas area, you're from Down East. So when I came here, they were very surprised to know that I spoke English, because it was considered people spoke French. My mother's first language was French. There are two people who were especially prominent. One was Charles Honoré, my high school chemistry teacher, and the other was Joe Mitchell, my civics and social studies teacher. They saw something in me that perhaps others didn't, and they saw, some potential for advancement. My family was very poor, and so they couldn't pay for these tests that I had to take, the SAT test and those various achievement tests, and they literally advised me not to take the test, and they paid for the test. I remember Mr. Mitchell actually driving me to Beaumont to take, I think may have been some achievement test or some SAT test. And the test results came back, and Mr. Honoré submitted those test results to a program at Yale University called Cooperative Program for Educational Opportunity. Yale then distributed those test scores to various colleges around the country. And before you know it, I'm getting letters of interest from hundreds of colleges around the country. I received a letter from Dartmouth as a result of the distribution of those achievement scores out of Yale. I had never heard of Dartmouth. My interest was focused on Xavier, where Mr. Honoré had received his degree in chemistry, and at Southern University. I went to Southern University Chemistry Institute in the summer of '66 along with Carl Stewart, who is now the chief judge of the federal Fifth Circuit. We were classmates that summer. So I was offered to skip my senior year in high school and to go directly into Southern. And my parents decided that I was too young or immature to go from 11th grade into college. And they really wanted me to go to Xavier, which was a Catholic university. And my family has a rich and heavily Catholic background. Ultimately, I decided to take the academic offer with a full scholarship to Dartmouth College. I grew up in North Lake Charles in the '60s. It was a very segregated community at that time. I would go weeks without seeing white people. So I go to Dartmouth in New Hampshire, 99% white. It was a cultural shock. Okay, there were about 800 students in the freshman class. It's a small college. In fact, it's the smallest of the Ivy League schools. And we were 16 black students in our class, most of whom were from middle-class backgrounds. I'm the poor kid from the South, terrified because I'm among all these folks who went to these private prep schools. So I had to compete. And it made you work harder because you had, students from very prosperous backgrounds who, if they failed, had something to fall back on. I had nothing to fall back on except to come back to Lake Charles and do what? Be a laborer, as my father was. So we didn't have that social safety net to fall back in. I was part of a Tucker program at Dartmouth. At Dartmouth, it was mandatory that we spend at least one trimester off campus as part of your graduation requirements. So I spent a trimester, 3 months in Sierra Leone, West Africa. I also taught 3 months at PS 29. It's an elementary school in Jersey City, New Jersey. It was the largest elementary school in the country. And I also taught at John Kennedy High School in Richmond, California, in an urban studies program. And that's how I became interested in education, which lasts until this day. And so I really wasn't sure that I would go to law school, I'd considered perhaps a career in education or a career in business. So I took time out after graduating. I graduated on June 13th, 1971. I took a year off and I worked as an assistant to the dean of the college for a year so that I could, kind of assimilate what I had done in the last 4 years, synthesize all of this stuff. So I took a year off and I decided, you know what, I'm going to be a lawyer. I had a great interest in social equity, income inequality at that time, and I thought that law school would be the best vehicle by which to correct some of those inequalities. I knew I was coming back to Louisiana to practice law. I knew I had an interest in civil rights litigation. I knew that my father was an officer in a 3,000 member unit, so I had an inbuilt clientele. And so that is what motivated me to come back south to Tulane, where I could, practice my craft here in Louisiana. I was accepted as one of 4 fellows, interns with the Legal Defense and Educational Fund in New York City. And that law firm is the preeminent public interest law firm in the country. I returned to Lake Charles and worked with the famous or infamous Jack Rogers for 1 month. And as you very well know, there are colorful stories about Jack Rogers in the Lake Charles community. I was then hired as the first black assistant DA in Calcasieu Parish under Frank Salter. The Bar Association and the judiciary were both male and pale. Okay, there was only one black lawyer in Lake Charles at the time, and that was Louis Guidry. And at the time, Wilford Carter, who later became a state representative, city councilman, and a judge, and I were the only 2 other black attorneys back in 1976. I handled some cases that I think that had statewide impact. For instance, Clark v. Edwards. I was co-counsel in that case, which transformed the way by which judges are elected at the district court level and at the appeal court level and the Supreme Court level. I was instrumental in forming the old Bayou Comprehensive Health Center, which is now SWLA Center for Health Services. It's a federally qualified health center. We started with $10,000 and 2 physicians. Today, and no patients. But today we have 19 providers, 6 dentists, $17 million budget, and we serve 23,000 patients in Lake Charles, Lafayette, Oberlin, and Crowley. I was also instrumental in starting 3 charter schools. We have 2 pre-K through 8 charter schools here, and we have a high school charter, Lake Charles College Prep, and those 3 schools serve a combined total of about 850 students. Students who otherwise would not have a choice. They would be bound to go to school in their zoned areas. 85% of those students would be going to schools that are underperforming or failing, D or F schools. Same students, same parents, same zip code, same everything. They're performing well in our schools. One can use your power as an attorney to literally save lives. That happened twice in my profession, in my practice as a lawyer. Once was in a case called State v. Emmerich Saunier, capital murder. He was accused of killing the first law enforcement officer in the parish, and he did. He killed him. But we were able to exonerate him because of a self-defense. He was an electrical engineering student at McNeese who was accused of shooting a cop without any defenses. We were able to, Judge Al Gray and I were lawyers in that case. We were able to exonerate him. We also defended a guy named Joe Louis Perry, who's in Angola now. Joe Louis was accused of, and actually did, murder a truck driver at a truck stop in Vinton. The lawyers who represented him did not know that he had given an inculpatory statement until the second day of trial. They met with him 2 days on 2 occasions before trial, once at arraignment and once on the Friday before the trial started on Monday. So obviously he was convicted and he was given a death penalty. There were no witnesses called during the penalty phase. We took his case on 2 days before his execution. We got an order stopping the execution. We had a habeas corpus hearing in federal court, which lasted over 40 days, and we were able to overturn his death penalty. We were able to save his life. We were not able to save him from Angola. No doubt he did the crime, but he deserved a better defense than that at the capital stage of it. I had never meant to be a judge, but I was appointed by the Louisiana Supreme Court in 1984 to fill a vacancy on the city court bench. And I sat on the city court bench for 1 year. And of course, as you very well know, the city court bench is where most people, city court is where most people go. 3,000 cases probably per month. So I was able to see some of the struggles of just a common, everyday folk who came through that court. Yeah, I became very close with Judge Yelverton, who was very influential in really shaping my career. I became close to him as a practicing attorney, and as I said before, he encouraged me that perhaps I should think one day about becoming a judge. He didn't say whether it was a district judge or an appellate court judge or a Supreme Court justice. He just suggested being a judge he thought would be compatible with my personality and with my level of accomplishment and achievement. And we became friends, and he's probably the reason that I'm Chief Judge of the Third Circuit today. Why is that? When I was elected in August of '92 without opposition, I was busy closing out my practice. I had not taken my oath of office. I came to visit Judge Yelverton here at the court to get an idea, a sense of appreciation of how this court actually worked, what was expected of me. He explained to me that things work by seniority here, and that there were several other judges who were going through the election process who had been challenged and who would probably be elected. But the first person who would be sworn in would have the advantage of perhaps being chief judge one day. And so I came to his office as a lawyer. He asked me if I had an oath of office. I said yes. I called my office. Jackie, my assistant, brought over the oath. He swore me in. I came to his office as a lawyer. I returned to my law office as a judge. Yeah, Max v. Brown Industries involves a workers' compensation proceeding. And workers' compensation is very important to me because of my background. I know that if a family misses a paycheck, they live from paycheck to paycheck. These are just regular, everyday, common workers. If they miss a paycheck, it's very critical to their lives. Maxie was a case where there was sham rehabilitation. And, our court came down very harshly on sham rehabilitation that sought to deny an injured worker his or her indemnity benefits. Another was Sayre, S-A-Y-R-E versus Pinnacle, and that established the idea that one could have an adverse presumption in a situation where evidence did not exist but was missing, and missing deliberately. Another was Rochelle v. Brulette, which established the standard for an award for the wrongful death of a parent. And as a judge, separate and apart from the Third Circuit, I take a lot of pride in being part of the Supreme Court team. I was appointed to the Supreme Court ad hoc justice to determine and decide who would be the next Chief Justice following the retirement of Justice Kitty Kimball. It was important because it was the first time that there was a contested election with respect to who is going to be Chief Justice the Constitution says it's the justice who is longest in point of tenure. And there was a controversy as to whether or not Justice Johnson's tenure on the Fourth Circuit, who was placed by appointment to the Supreme Court, whether those years counted. And it was important because Justice Johnson became the first black person to serve as the Chief Justice of the Louisiana Supreme Court. Never grow up, because you always keep learning. And so that's what I tell folks. You never grow up. You have to continue learning. And two, and most importantly, one has to have a sense of mission. What will outlast you once you leave your profession? You won't be a lawyer for the rest of your life. You won't be a judge for the rest of your life. When you look back on your life, you have to point to something that's going to outlast you. So it's a matter of perpetuating yourself, and you have to be part of a cause that's greater than yourself.